So good to see everybody. Welcome to Redbud. I'm happy that you all made it here because it's such a busy weekend, so close before Christmas. Long time no see, right? Wow, we're so excited to have this dialogue between Michael and Bradley. So I want to scoot back a little bit. So early summer, we had an exhibition, a collegiate exhibition, and Michael earned first place, which then earned him the show he currently has here at Redbud. Bradley, who is the curator of the collection at the Ogden Museum of Art in New Orleans, juried the show and gave Michael a well-earned first place. So, and I think we can all agree that looking at his work, he is, this is a great beginning and you will go places, yeah. So, going back to last Saturday, which was amazing, we sold half the show before the show opened, and I didn't tell Michael, so he comes in and I said, Michael, come here, I need to show you something. And he looked at the price list and was floored, you know. And then we sold the show out that evening, which was so amazing. We are so excited for Michael, yes. And so, yeah, I'm thrilled to have both of them, to have this dialogue and this discussion. So Michael, when you look at his work, you see that his paintings and prints, they are in the tradition of his heroes, actually, Leonora Carrington and Remedios Varo, but in his own style. And this is what caught all of our eyes, because he is so young and he draws from his own experiences, storytelling and myths, and fuses this together and came out with this amazing body of work. And so, and Bradley, which I'm so excited about that he came back for this, awesome. He brings in his curatorial knowledge and his narrative. He has studied Southern art, and so he brings all this knowledge to the table. And so we are looking forward for you to have this dialogue between the two. So I think you will learn a little bit about his process, the influences, and maybe one or two surprising stories. We'll see. So please join me in welcoming Michael and Bradley.
Thank you all for being here on this beautiful day in Houston, and it's great to see so many familiar faces and new faces and some great artists in the room. I'm not going to name all of you because you know who you are, but it's also, we have a guest all the way from Bastrop, Texas. It's Ellen Tanner, one of my favorite artists in Texas. And thank you, Redbud, for all the work that you do for this community, in this community. And it just gets better every year. So thanks for having me and for having this show for Michael. As Tanya said, I'm getting her back for. As Tanya said, I was a juror for Emerging Visions, and I jury a lot of shows every year. And but the amount of talent coming out of Houston was really impressive in the college programs, and there was so much good work that it was hard to choose, but not really. Michael's work was pretty amazing, and it spoke to me very personally from my own personal taste and interest, and I was just shocked to see this young talent, and really excited about it too. So I was hoping I could come to the opening, but I had a previous speaking engagement the next morning, so I couldn't make it. And then I was doubly upset when I realized that I couldn't buy anything. But so excited. I got a text from the artist Sherry Owens, who had just purchased a piece, and it was all caps. sold out. Michael's sold out. She said, Tanya's running around screaming. I said, that's amazing, well-deserved, it's solid work, and somebody get Tanya a Valium and a cocktail, please. Which I think they did. So I said, well, I'll gladly come back and give a talk just because I really wanted to see the show, and then they would cover my airfare, so here I am. But I figured we would go through and start with just the very beginning, Michael, and tell us where are you from, and did you grow up in Houston? What was your childhood like?
So I was originally born in Beaumont, and around when I was 4 years old, around 4, we moved to Texas. We live in the border between Clear Lake and Pasadena, but of course I travel into Houston and have been traveling to Houston my entire life. So I've basically grown up in Houston.
And when did you first start making work?
So my dad is an artist, or he did a lot of drawing as a kid himself. And I remember my first instances drawing was with my dad, at our coffee tables, and draw little pictures, and from then on, doodle on my nose as a school kid, and I just kept on drawing.
So you were always drawing?
Always drawing.
And you had the support of your family?
Yeah, well, I would get in trouble at school because I would draw on. I remember the teachers would hold us, Michael, can't do that.
You got the last laugh now, right?
Yeah.
So in this body of work, we see a lot of influence of mythology and, of course, alchemy and hermeticism and esoteric arts. And when did that interest begin? Was it Dungeons and you're too young for Dungeons and Dragons?
Yeah.
Harry Potter, comic books, and no.
I got into magic as a concept when I was around 12 years old. I mean, I played a lot of video games. I grew up in the 2010s, so a lot of video games, a lot of good video games. I was really interested in stories. When I went to school, we talked about Greek myths and fables. So those things were always circulating in my life. I remember my 6th grade teacher got me into the story of Macbeth with the weird sisters, and she would read parts of the story to me, and I was really interested in that. I remember one of my earliest interactions with the kind of artwork that I'm interested in were woodcuts. I didn't know what they were, but they were woodcuts. I remember them very distinctly of witch hunting, what witches do, and I thought they looked really interesting. What is that? I didn't know what it was. I was 12. But I liked the way they looked, and I remember that being an influence on me. I mentioned earlier, seeing things on TV, on the Weather Channel. I remember there being stories about paranormal experiences related to weather. And there's a witch in, I think she lives in Connecticut, that I remember learning about, that really got me interested in the story and ideas of witchcraft. Her name was Mold Dyer, and that story, there's actually a rock in Connecticut where you can put your hands where her hands were. She was a real person. She was accused of being a witch, but there's a story about her cursing the town. I remember that also being influential on me. So it's been around from a really young age, these ideas.
And printmaking.
Printmaking, yeah. I didn't know what it was, but it was there.
Right, and it influenced your aesthetic, obviously. So
absolutely.
Did you have art classes in high school?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, through middle school and high school. My middle school art teacher is actually the person who got me interested in watercolor painting. She was Narmeen Bacchus. She is from Azerbaijan, and she did a lot of painting on silk. And watercolor is, I guess, kind of adjacent to that. So she had a lot of watercolor paints, and that's how I started watercolor painting. Yeah.
And by the time you graduated high school, you knew that you wanted to study arts?
I knew I wanted to study arts in middle school.
Wow.
So I really knew what I wanted to do. I was originally interested in book illustration. I followed a lot of illustrators. And I think that also influenced my work. I feel a lot of my work does kind of have a storybook kind of feel, especially the watercolors.
Rackham or
it just kind of has a feel to it that feels kind of story I remember we had that one German collector or curator, what's his name? He's from Berlin. He goes, I think you'd be a good children's book illustrator.
Oh,
wow.
I don't speak like that.
No. Houston for my undergraduate, but I didn't get an I'm really glad I went to UHCL. They have a really good program there.
And who were your teachers there?
So I had a selection. Like I took a lot from all of them. Like we have Lauren Yandell, Lauren Cusrow, Jason Makepeace, and Clay Leonard are the big ones.
I'd never heard of University of Houston Clear Lake until I drew this exhibition, and I was really impressed at the quality of the work that was coming out of that program.
An incredible program.
Yeah.
We have all sorts of things.
Yeah. So then you're adjacent to Houston. You're coming to Houston all the time. You're here. Where when I saw the work, obviously there's this strong element of surrealism in the tradition of Carrington and Varro. Did you go to the Menil as a kid? Did you have access to that, or when did you first encounter those artists?
I discovered them on YouTube, and it was first. So I was already. It actually started like I'd always been making work like this in my sketchbooks, and I like a lot of things I was interested in that I was inspired by were influenced from those like historical practices. So elements like alchemy and hermeticism, in my eyes, have always kind of been a part of my life. Like I can see those themes throughout the things I've been interested in, the ideas that I was drawn to. I can see them throughout my entire life. I was already interested in alchemy before I discovered Remedios Varro. I was drawn to Varro because the title of the video I saw that introduced her to me, it was like the alchemical paintings of Remedios Varro, and that's what got me into Varro. So I discovered Carrington after Varro, but that kind of showed me that because all my work primarily had been done in sketchbooks. I focused a lot on figurative work and early college, like figurative work and like realistic drawing. And Varro was kind of one of the first artists where I was like, oh, I can turn things I'm doing in my sketchbooks into like a fine art. So then I just kind of dropped doing like super realistic, I have early collage drawings, and I stopped doing that, so I'm doing this.
So it was Varro giving you permission to
Yes.
explore what you were already exploring.
Well, I was already interested in it.
Yeah, in your sketchbooks, but
Yes.
I think you said earlier there was also a teacher that encouraged you
Yes.
to take what was in your sketchbooks into what was on your easel.
Yes. So I was encouraged by my printmaking professor, because printmaking I feel like is so etching was my first printmaking medium, and I feel like etching was the first time I kind of took the things that were in my sketchbooks and turned them into pieces of art rather than just sketches. So printmaking is really where my art starts, beyond just the sketchbooks. So printmaking is really personal to my heart.
Well, we'll dig into that in just a second, but you get a piece into Emerging Visions, which what an amazing program. Hopefully it continues here at Redbud, because I think it's great to give a platform to these young voices. But you get a piece in. How was that? Were you excited to?
Oh yeah.
Was that your first exhibition?
That was my first exhibition outside of, I was in another exhibition I couldn't attend in Baytown, but this is the first exhibition outside of my school that I've gone to and been a part of, and it was really, really fun. I didn't think anything. I didn't expect anything. I just kind of applied. I was like, I got to a show, it'd be good for my resume.
So how did it feel to get top prize?
It was very surreal. I didn't think it was gonna happen. I did not think. I just kind of was I'm just here. I'm here. It's good for the resume. It's good to be part of shows. It's good fun. But I was I went in thinking don't expect anything.
And had you shown this body of work? How new was this body of work at that time? Had you been showing it in your critiques?
Oh, it's been about a 2-year production.
Okay.
Started off very experimental, but it was mainly at my universities. I take them home, and that'd be the end of it. But this was the first time it had been exhibited publicly.
So you get the top prize. You had some work, but did you have enough for a show at that point?
At that time, yes, most of this work I had already had completed.
Okay.
The oil painting was still in production, that watercolor was still in production. Everything was technically finished, but I did go back into all my watercolors and touch up things because I wanted them to be to the same level. I want everything to be cohesive. So technically everything was done, but I did do some reworking into them.
Well, let's dig into this then. So the title, Hiraeth, what does that mean, and where does that come from, and how does it speak to
So Hiraeth is an Old Welsh word. It's a word that doesn't have a proper English translation. It's basically a longing for like a place, like a home, a culture that is very distant or existed so far in the past, or it might not even exist at all. But I feel like for me, like this relates a lot to visual communication for me. I think Hiraeth brings into conversation, I think, the inefficiency of language as communication, like verbal language. I feel like art, and one of the best things about art is it can communicate very abstract ideas that words sometimes can't always do. And I feel like that's why forming artist statements for artists, especially young artists, is so hard. Because it's like, how do you talk about everything in your work in a half a page, almost a full page? It's complicated, it's really hard. And I feel like my work talks about a lot of things. Like, I think my work better represents me as a person than the way I present myself, or the way I talk, the way I walk, the way I do anything. I think my work, if you want to know who I am, my work is a better reflection of me than anything. So I feel like that's part of the reason why I named the show Hiraeth. And also because I'm interested in historical things as well. But it ties in, they all tie in together. Yeah.
Well, immediately when I dug into the body of work, I didn't get that from that first piece so much, but when I dug into the body of work, you do see alchemy, you do see,
Yes.
you know, all the way back to Breton and the crystals in this beautiful little piece here, and all of those kind of alchemical rituals happening, as well as, you know, larger, you know, cultural myths and pan-cultural myths. But one of the things I noticed was this beautiful palette that you have, and it's uniform throughout the watercolors and the oils. And I was thinking about these concepts of the black, the red, and the white, and the nebedo, the albedo, the rubedo, and the black being putrefaction, being death, being dissolution, the white being the purification, that kind of burning fire transformation, and then that red being the unification towards perfection, towards that grand object, you know, they sought in alchemy. And so were those colors and those concepts also a part of this?
They absolutely are.
And so that's where the palette comes from.
A lot of the palette does come from that.
Mm.
I think there's multiple places that my interest in palettes, I mean, like, it's hard to say there's one thing that started it. I feel like it's like a little bit of everything. But that color-wise, like using a lot of red, a lot of darker colors does come from alchemy. I'm really interested in kind of the unification between opposites. And I think that's one of the biggest influences from alchemy, is this idea that you could take mercury and sulfur and turn, like, those are the two elements that create all the metals. And not even just all the metals, but they thought that these things existed, these elements existed in everything. So, and this is also a very mystical idea. Like, you see this a lot in Kabbalah. And the idea that you can take two things that oppose each other. I think this is where this figure a lot comes into. A lot of unification between opposing forces.
And the yellow also being that
An important part.
citron,
Yes.
and that
Citronation.
Citronation, right?
Yes.
So that transitional between the black, white, and the red. It's
Yes.
often depicted in yellow.
I think a lot of the scenes in my work are within some form of like transition. And this goes back to an early Celtic belief, the belief that states of like in between, so like fall and winter, springtime, dawn and dusk, these are times where the world is more close to the spiritual world. So gods, ancestors, fairies, demons, ghosts, they can all come through during these states of in-between. And I feel like that's also really influential.
Thinning the veil.
The thinning the veil, yes, the one right behind you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we, since we don't want to be here for 3 hours.
Yes,
So,
yes.
and we easily could be with this body of work. Why don't we choose a piece? What's the title?
Cosmic Guides.
Cosmic Guides. And why don't you break it down for us and talk about inspiration, imagery, narrative that you're building there, the process?
All right. So with Cosmic Guides, I think we have to go back to, this is a very new piece. I started in June, before Emerging Visions. when I had graduated my undergrad, I did not get into my graduate program, and that was kind of my plan, was to go to grad school. And I should have had a better backup plan. But anyways, when I didn't get in, I have this whole year of time where I'm waiting to reapply to go to school. And in that time, I'm also living with my parents, and I don't want them to feel like, you know, I want them to know that I am working towards the next thing. And I've always felt guided in my life, and my mom in particular encouraged me as a child, gave me had the belief of guardian angels. And that was really important to feeling comfortable as a kid. And I've always felt kind of guided in my life. And like a lot of these figures are related to the natural world and are related to the occult. Like these flying figures are from one of my favorite alchemists, one of my biggest influences, probably a bigger influence than any painter or artist, was Paracelsus. His belief in these kind of spirits that relate to the natural world. These are sylphs, they're one of his air elementals, and they're holding chamomile flowers, and chamomile flowers represent resilience and endurance, and I just kind of wanted to feel in that moment some kind of guidance from something. I've always felt really deeply connected to the natural world. So I have these figures, these like nature spirits guiding me with this figure. I guess my figures do represent parts of myself, for sure. People have commented they look like me, and they absolutely I didn't mean for them to, but they just ended up doing anyway, so it's better that they do. This figure holding the hand of the other figure, kind of guiding the hand that has the knife of when and when not to strike. And also, I mean, the scenery itself, the weather, this goes back to being a kid. My parents, I was telling Bradley earlier, made me watch the Weather Channel thinking that I would go to bed and be bored, but I ended up getting really interested in weather, and that's actually where I got introduced to the story I was talking about Lowell Dyer earlier. They had a show on there, and that was like one of the influences for me as a kid to be interested in like occultism and magic. So it all really started with the Weather Channel. So that's, I'm incorporating now more weather into my work. But yeah, just this feeling of being guided to me is really important. Feeling some kind of connection to a higher power, to the natural world is really important to me. And that's a really big part of Paracelsus' philosophy. If you've ever, I think everyone should read Paracelsus. But yeah, that's very Paracelsian in my eyes.
And the bull figure.
Yes, so that is Taurus. So my astrological sign is Taurus, and I just felt like it was important since the work about myself in this moment where I was feeling very emotional in this time of my life. Out of college, really out of school for the first time ever. I've always been in school, so it's like wanting to find some kind of things that are personal to me, that are comfortable to me. And I'm really interested in astronomy and astrology, so I have this figure. I see this figure kind of like Venus, because Venus is the planet that rules Taurus, bringing Taurus from the heavens to the figure.
It's just a little masterpiece.
Yeah.
So you're building these narratives that come from history, they come from ancient traditions, but you're portraying a very universal message with each piece. But these are often based in autobiographical narratives,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Can you give us some other examples in the room of, if you're willing to share with us?
Oh yeah.
Of autobiography that then makes its way into
Absolutely.
work.
So for one, this painting, the longer one, the tall one, my dad, and like growing up, I was always placed in like NASA summer camps. There's a huge influence like of space within my work. And that's like, I'm really interested in like those rovers that are on the surface of Mars and Venus. And when I was making this painting, I was really thinking about Mars. And in my new work, I'm thinking a lot about the surface of Venus, and like there's like a bunch of new missions now that are going to Venus. I'm really excited for that. But a lot of like space has had a huge influence on my work. So this is like a lot of my work. Like you see it in this one, you see it in the one over here. Just kind of more, I don't know. I imagine all my scenes existing on exoplanets. Like I don't imagine them like if they're anywhere, if they are any place, it's another planet. And I really, really love like like the infinite of space, and that was always something that was a part of me growing up. And this interest of space, I used to have dreams of like going to space, and like going like really far out into space.
This is a common theme within Houston artists.
Yes, it's so awesome to be this close to NASA.
Even one of the great abstract painters of American history, definitely one of the greatest from the state of Texas, Dorothy Hood. You know,
Yeah.
Dorothy said, "I was painting outer space before NASA went there." So any other examples of your own personal narrative making its
This
way?
silver point, I feel like everyone, like this one is about a lot of my relationships with different people in my life. Like growing up, I like as kids you get along with everyone, but as you start to get older, you know, everyone gets into cliques, you know. And I found a lot of times, especially in early middle school, early high school, making connections with a lot of the other guys and things like that. So a lot of my friends I still have to this day, were women. And it wasn't really until I started going to college that I started to kind of build more relationships and friendships with the other men that I was around. And I started to realize like how different women and men view each other. And like the way they talk about each other is really interesting. They talk about each other really differently. So in a lot of ways, I felt like I kind of got to see like the two arguments against each other. And I don't know, I found it really interesting. And I found that kind of relationship interesting. So I made that artwork a lot. So this one's called Adam and Eve. And it's relating to, you know, like, I don't know, like I was thinking a lot in Narnia, like the kids, like the sons are called the sons of Adam. And the girls are called the daughters of Eve. So I kind of view them as kind of being like divine representations of both masculinity and femininity, male and female.
Well, in surrealism, traditionally rooted in alchemical ideals,
Yes.
that unification often meant non-binary
Yes.
representation.
The intersex figures.
And so how does that idea play into something like Adam and Eve or into maybe other figures? Is there...
Yes.
Yeah.
So, this is so fun to talk about. In the beginning stages of developing my work and like how I want my figures to look, I was really intentional about things like gender, race, and age. I felt like putting those things upon the figures is inherently a conversation. And I just was not interested in talking about like the experiences of men or women. And I mean, like, not that those things aren't now occurring in my work, but I felt like in the beginning especially, making a figure white or black or Asian, male or female, young or old, those are inherently conversations. And if you look at art, I do think they are part of the conversation, or a lot of paintings. So for me, I just kind of wanted these humanoid figures to be stripped of everything. And I didn't realize the alchemical significance of like intersex figures until like a year ago. And them being kind of like a unification between opposites. I mean, a lot of alchemists thought that Jesus was intersex, that he had both aspects of men and women because he's the equality between all opposites. And the ideas really played into a lot of the other ideas as exploring these states of in-between that kind of you see in early Celtic beliefs. So they really meshed well together, or at least in my mind they do.
And that kind of genderless figure being the embodiment of the Raveda,
the unification.
Unification of opposites towards wholeness, towards perfection, right?
I think everyone has both, I guess, our understandings of what it means to be a man and a woman in all of us. We all have masculine and feminine aspects to everyone. And I feel like when we try to deny those parts of ourselves, like, you know, like men not being able to be emotional, it's just such a disservice. I mean, like, I was seeing things that men die sooner than women. And I think a lot of it has to do with the rejection of anything emotional, because it's seen as being like a feminine trait, and it's just, I think it's just such a disservice to ourselves. You know? I don't know. That's just my personal perspective.
Well, and with this silver point in particular, you're exploring gender and the relationships of gender in that piece, but also the very material you're using.
Yes.
You know, like I think of egg tempera, you know, you're painting with the stuff of life, you know, there. But with
should have been egg tempera.
But with silver point, you're drawing with a noble metal, one of the core.
Silver is the most important metal in my opinion, at least to me in alchemy, because the moon, like as a kid, like I started drawing all my work, I would make my own like creatures and recipes, and a lot of it, the moon was a part of that. And if you know about the correlation of silver and alchemy with the moon, I mean, they use a lot of astrological symbolism in alchemy. They would actually use the names of the planets as a replacement for the names of metals. I actually have a book that's written by some Franciscan friar. It's like a really shitty translation. Really poor translation of the Latin version.
We're all adults here.
Yeah, I know. It's not professional. But they give all the names for the metals. Like silver is called Luna, or Lunae. Gold is called Sol. These Latin names for the sun and the moon. Silver, one, is a feminine metal. The moon is a feminine symbol, and it has relations to astrology and to gender, because metals and the planets all have symbolism relating to our experiences in that kind of like hermetic corpus, and that's where I think all of the hermeticism comes in through the alchemy and astrology.
I've been recently fascinated with the Dallas artist Linda Ridgway and her work, and she works beautifully in silver point. But I've never even seen gold point. Have you ever explored gold point?
I was going to buy a gold point sign, but there's a reason why I didn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't patina. That's the only reason why. I like the fact that silver point changes over time. And I feel like there's a transformation there. And with gold point, it just kind of, to me, like as beautiful as it is, it looks like graphite. And I just feel more close to the moon, personally, and like a lot of the ideas that are in my work and the symbolism, the things in the common in my life than the sun. So
And you're seeking that oxidation.
I am seeking the oxidation. I cannot wait to see. I'm telling Sherry. I told Sherry that she needs to send me pictures. I don't know how long it's going to take, but because I have silver points from like months ago, they're still.
Well, think about the thing. I looked. One of my favorite artists ever in the history of art is Walter Anderson, the first artist that I liked as a child, and he did these beautiful drawings with this iron-filled ink, like just full of iron. And now they've oxidized so much they're actually etching the paper away. Like they're rusting through. So I've never seen that happen with silver point, but
The silver point, I don't think.
that would make you happy.
That would make me. I want my work to last forever.
Yeah.
Truly.
Yeah.
I don't want it to disappear.
Where do we go from here? So let's talk a little bit about alchemy as a symbol in your work and as a symbol in your life, and what message do you think people can take away from?
For me, alchemy, for one, alchemy's been a part of my entire life. Like I remember hearing about alchemy as a kid. It's like early chemistry. And I remember like I would like when I early work in my childhood, I would make my own recipes that feels very alchemical, because that's literally what all alchemical textbooks are, just these weird books full of not working recipes.
What did Varro call it, the useless science?
Oh, the useless scientists or the alchemists.
Right.
She was calling science useless in that game.
Right.
Yeah, alchemy and transformation is something I've struggled with a lot in my life. Like the idea that, like moving on from things and being able to grow and change from things and being able to move away from things has been a problem in my life. And I think alchemy takes a dualistic meaning. It's also one, being transformation itself, as it's an important thing, but also I think it represents art. It is an art.
That's what I was hoping you would get to.
And I think alchemy as a practice, and alchemy today has like a very spiritual connotation, and it's created almost like, I think, it's a misrepresentation of what alchemy is. It's not that there isn't spirituality in alchemy, but these people weren't like having an inner transformation. They were scientists first and foremost. This is an art. They have there's a lot of you'll see I hide files in my artwork all the time. And I'm like, alchemy has incredible symbolism. And it's a good thing that people can find value in it, but there shouldn't be a loss that it's an art, first and foremost. not mysticism.
Or a metaphor for the creative act itself.
Yes, it's very creative. I mean, they thought that God left the world purposely in some parts uncompleted. That's where the whole idea of the Philosopher's Stone comes from. God left things as seeds so that humans, alchemists, could make new things and improve upon nature. And I think that's kind of what artists do already. I mean, they take natural materials and they turn it into meaning. And I think that in of itself is kind of like a way of transformation or transmutation. It's taking one thing and turning it into something else. Like, I mean, these are pigments that come from rocks and plants. And you turn them into something else. You turn them into figures and rocks and clouds and birds.
And also you make through this act, you make the unknowable known, you make the unseen visible.
Yeah.
Those things that you cannot, maybe you don't have words for.
No, there's not a lot of words for
You
it.
go from the blackness
Yes.
through this act of purification, which would be the creative act, into the red, which is the wholeness, and finally you're transmitting something out of the chaos of the unknown into something that you can actually communicate with us, the lucky viewers.
Yeah. I mean, communication is something I'm really working on within my work. Sometimes I think it gets too vague or like too hidden. And but then I was thinking, I'm like, well, it's not because it's too hidden. It's just because we don't talk about a lot of these old things enough. I really want people to learn something when they look at my work. If they can learn something about like an ancient belief system or occultism or something, I think or religion. There's a lot of religious aspects of my work as well. I took a lot from Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. It's like, yes, there's personal narratives too, and I want those things to be known. It's liberating to be able to talk about things that are really internal. But if they can also, there's dualism there. I want people to learn something about history as well.
And maybe in this world where we're always fighting with one another, you've got the Muslims fighting with the Christians, fighting everyone. But with alchemy, no one's going to get mad at you for using alchemy. And this part, and all of these things we're all trying to say the same thing.
We are.
And by using this kind of antiquated, mystical language, maybe you're setting a bigger table for that conversation.
I'm really glad you mentioned that, because I think spirituality is a huge part of my work. And I was always told what to believe in when it came to everyone. There's like two sides of the argument. You have people who are really passionate about religion and spirituality, who view everything else as heretical. And then you have people who are very passionate against spirituality and religion, and everything else is heresy. They both think both sides are going to destroy the world. And it's like, everyone's telling you how you should feel about things, and I feel like it's just pointless. I think there's capital T truth, and we all have a bunch of little t truths. And I'm not saying any of those are wrong, but we all are probably looking at the same thing. And I think that truth is ultimately, and I think this is a good thing, truth is ultimately unknowable. And I feel like that kind of mystery is really what drew me in the first place, or a lot of it in the first place, to occultism. This idea, and that's why I love so much about alchemy, is that everything is so vague. Like, is it actually mercury and sulfur, or is it like the vibes of the metal? Are you talking about the planets, or are you talking about gold and silver? That kind of vagueness, that mystery, I think is part of the most amazing parts of life. Like, I think we need to be more comfortable with not knowing things. That's my personal opinion.
Well, I think there was a reason why the surrealists who wound up in Mexico and that this conversation was happening in world history when it did.
Yeah.
And you see some of the same things happening right now in this world, and I think that message is very important and very needed and very accessible through work like this. And I think there's a reason that price sheet is full of red dots. Doesn't work. So I think for us, as viewers, maybe this is a spiritual affirmation and the beginnings of a conversation. But for you, all those red dots must really be an affirmation of your practice.
It makes me really happy.
So I guess that leads us to what's next. Like, where do you go from here?
So right now I'm finishing up the last two things for my grad school portfolio. I'm going to continue applying for shows. I want to apply to shows locally, and I also want to look at shows elsewhere. Work-wise, I'm still pushing my ideas, and I think I'm getting better. I'm trying to get better at the way I communicate things. I think there are new directions. I'm pulling a lot, not just from occultism now, but also like there's a lot of more religious elements. Like I'm looking back on a lot of like biblical and Quran like stories, like just like these origin stories between things. I think are really interesting. And I'm also putting a lot more space into my work, and really excited. Yeah, a lot of science is also getting involved in my work.
Well, I have a dear friend, the artist Josephine Sacco. I just did talk with her on Monday, and the title of the exhibition that I curated for her was a survey of her work back 2013 or something. Was I'm gonna butcher this. My Spanish is awful too. But I think it's called Óyeme con los ojos, means hear me with your eyes.
Yeah.
And so I think we hear you, man. This is some solid work, and I'm really excited to see what comes next.
Yeah, thank you.
So, thank you. So I guess we'll open it up to questions now. I'm sure you have lots. Who's first? Yes.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say this has been one of the most enlightening conversations I've ever had the pleasure of enjoying. And I want to compliment Bradley on choosing you, and I want to thank your mother for raising you so well.
And father's there.
I'm just overwhelmed. I mean, I'm 75, and I barely had an inch of those kind of thoughts, and you handled them so well.
Thank you.
We didn't buy one of your pieces because they were all gone. Got there, I hope to, because you put so much of yourself in each piece. And so often, and I'm sure everyone knows that, they're just dribble on canvas. Yours is completely not that. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Was that a question?
Oh, John.
We have dates today.
I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that means a lot. Thank you. I mean, my parents have been really helpful. I mean, my dad helped me build all of these frames. He has experience in woodworking, so I learned how to build. Yeah.
Every weekend out in the garage, taking their measurements,
Yeah.
their frame.
Yeah, we
Then
did.
they come in, oh, we messed up on one.
Yeah.
Do you take orders?
Yeah.
We'll talk.
Yes, let's see.
First, congratulations on an exquisite, magnificent show.
Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit about the sexuality? You mentioned it in your talk. The sexuality of the figures in your work. You used the word intersex.
Intersex. So it's in alchemy, the intersex figure represents the equality between opposites. It's a very so alchemists were very secretive with their work. So these figures represent the unification between opposites, because the belief that men and women are inherently separate was, it's very historical. The alchemists believed that to create the philosopher's stone, you have to unify these opposing parts. They believed that you have to unify mercury and sulfur together. There has to be a union there in a certain kind of ratio to create the philosopher's stone, or to create gold. So these figures represent that kind of unification. And again, it also goes back to not wanting to necessarily have a conversation about men or women particularly. And I think it's important that my figures have kind of like a vagueness to them. At least for me, I think it's important for them to. I don't want to have to think about, well, is this figure, how am I going to draw this? Am I going to draw breasts or a flat chest or this or that? I want these figures to just be themselves. I don't want to have to think about these kind of extra parts of them, because it's just not important to what I'm trying to do. But I do believe there's alchemical symbolism. I think a conversation on the way we understand how gender works, and how we view men and women are supposed to be, and how they're supposed to act. Because there's a lot of that. And I think it's harmful to our everyday existence. We have to be able to see that everything is in shades of gray rather than this or that. That's just the nature of the world. It's not one way or this way. It's it's usually a little bit like a gray area.
He sounds like the Ghost Rider from Men Are From Mars, Women Are From
So it takes the motivation away from the characters in the painting
Yes.
as to what they want, you know?
Yes.
I mean, maybe they're going for enlightenment. I don't know.
I think they're inherently spiritual beings. I view them inherently spiritual. I've also I've wondered before, there's like a cult that like people drank colloidal or like microdose of silver and their skin turned blue. And I'm like, these kind of are these people drinking because it's alchemy. I mean, alchemists would taste their mixtures. Like maybe they're alchemists who drinking too much of heavy metals and now their skin's turning different colors. I don't know. I've thought about my work in a lot of different ways.
And in so many cultures, including early Christianity.
Yeah, early Christianity is really influential. I mean,
Yeah, there's this idea of hermaphroditism, intersex, two-spirit, whatever the culture.
Yeah.
They were often sacred
they were.
within that culture. So placing when you're dealing with how would you say priestesses or
Yes.
it just also makes sense visually to depict them in an androgynous way.
Yeah.
So.
And this also goes back to an alchemical belief and also a belief in natural philosophy that the ancients were closer to truth than we are now. The idea that ancient cultures, and this is what started the whole interest in Hermeticism in Europe, was the belief, and in the Middle East, was the belief that these ancient cultures were closer to whatever God really is than what they were. So this is where you see the reintroduction of Greek philosophy in Europe, which is huge. Like that is European culture, is basically an extension of Greek and Roman culture. And you see a lot in the Middle East too. I mean, they were really interested in Plato and Aristophanes and Aristotle. I mean, it's basically, it's the history of one, science, philosophy, and religion. All goes back to this belief. And the first chemists and alchemy were alchemists who wanted to use that Greek word for alchemy, chemia, which is a Greek word, I believe. Yeah, it's a Greek word. So they would call them chemists. So I hope I'm saying that right. It's either a Coptic or a Greek word, but anyways, it's this belief that the ancients knew something we didn't. And I do believe there's an interest, I view natural philosophy as almost like a very sad thing. Like, I love modern science so much. But there is just whenever you read something so beautiful, when you read Neoplatonic philosophy, or if you read Hermetic philosophy, I have a book on the Hermetica, and I'm slowly getting through it, and just hearing the origin stories of how they view the world and how they understand everything, it's almost kind of sad that none of it's real. So I really want to create a space where these ideas can still exist. I think that's important to me, but also Hermeticism is a part of what I believe in about the world now. It's just a part of who I am. But yeah, it's about myself, but it's also about giving these older ideas a place to exist in the world.
So, top 3 books, reading list, if we want to catch up with you.
I think it'll take a long time.
Yeah.
No, I think we can simple down 3. Not Hermetica. Oh yes, guys.
One of the pieces that I especially like is that one.
Oh
Yes.
You and Sharon got that one.
And it has what I would call, as an engineer, trace elements.
Yes, it does.
Connecting lines. And I first ran into something similar to that in the really ancient works of the Aboriginals. Have you done as the Aboriginal works from, let's say, Australia, we utilize that concept quite a bit in their symbolism. Have you looked at that yet? Has that influenced you?
I haven't, but I should. I should be looking at those things. I am really weird when it comes to ideas that I pull from. Some things won't be a part of my life for years, and then suddenly it just comes back in a really big way. I am looking more at ancient cultures. I'm really interested in ancient Middle Eastern cultures right now.
Yeah.
There was so much going on in the pre-Islamic Middle East with the different kingdoms, and that's the origin of the major religions of the world. But I have been reading more about one, I've been really interested in Native American thought, There's a lot of really interesting ideas that Native Americans have that I feel like aren't talked about. And I think a part of it is because it's not written down. I mean, really, if we think about it, Europe got lucky that the Romans were there. They really were lucky. Like, without the Romans, the Celts wouldn't have any, the Celts, the Scandinavians, the Gauls, the Goths, they wouldn't have any of their stories written down. It's just by chance, really, that these stories are written down. So I'm really happy to see that there are people now writing down these like old African stories, these old Native American stories. Because I mean, there's only so much verbal communication can do without it just being over telephone, even if it's a cultural thing. Yeah, but no, I have been looking more into Native American, a little bit into Mesoamerican, but mainly Middle Eastern thought.
Here we're talking 10,000 years earlier, so, way before Rome.
Wait, yeah. No, I need to look into that. I mean, I want to look into, I'm trying to broaden my horizons with
Especially
different
when you're
cultures.
talking about nature.
Yes, yeah. Well, the relationship between nature and God was a lot different to ancient people than it is now. And I mean, you see that with like all the great philosophers, like at least people I think are great philosophers, and like occultists especially. The lines between how God and nature distinguish themselves from each other really begin to blur. Like we talked about, where's Stephanie? Oh, hi. We had talked a little bit about Agrippa on last Saturday. They just found a book they're attributing to Agrippa, and he literally says, nature is God. And this is like a new book they found, and it's this book on alchemy. And I mean, that's just completely heretical to the Roman Catholic belief of God. So I think the relationship between God and religion and philosophy, like philosophy presently is more close to the ancients than it is.
Well, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole here.
Sorry.
But what, no, I'm about to. So what about, how do you feel about, like the Gnostic Gospel?
Oh my
The
God,
Gospel
love
according to Thomas.
The Gospel of Mary Magdalene is my new favorite thing.
Well, and in Thomas, he says, to speak to what you were just speaking to, I think red letter Christ says, when I'm gone, do not look for me in the heavens, look for me under your sandal sole.
Yes.
Which sounds more like walk with
Pantheism or
than-
panentheism.
Yeah. So, do you feel like that is something that has been lost, that is continuing to be lost?
Yes.
Our connection to nature.
I
and
think one, our
salvation.
connection to nature, but also mysticism. I feel like religion has stripped itself of mysticism. I think all religions are inherently mystical if you look to the basis of it. I mean, look at Christianity. They have the concept of accepting the Holy Christ into your heart. That's mysticism. You are inviting God into you. That is a mystical tradition, whether they want to agree with it or not. And I feel like modern religion tries to distinguish itself. And modern spirituality, although with some people it's not the case, but you see kind of like this push away from mystical ideas. Like I feel like a lot of people have a chip on their shoulder because they view it as kind of, I feel like mysticism as a word is almost kind of problematic. Like a chip on their shoulder. But I think that mysticism is an important part of life. I mean, feeling connected to something higher, greater than who you are, is really important. To just feel like you have, I mean, at least for me it's been, to have like a purpose, to feel like you're a part of something greater.
And do you see your art practice as part of that endeavor?
Absolutely. I think my art is a spiritual practice. It feels very spiritual. It's definitely influenced the way I understand the world.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much for being here. Michael will be around for